I've started a YouTube channel to help others restore their cars and to show how it's really not that difficult. I've restored these four here in the garage over the last 6 years, and that was when I was working full time. So it can be done quickly. My goal here is to restore this next car within the next 6 months, assuming I can get the parts. That's been a supply chain problem for the last couple of years, but it seems like it's letting up, so we'll see how that goes. Just to kind of introduce myself, I've been on the for A body only MOPAR forum and the for B body only MOPAR forum, restoring my Coronet and Dart and Valiant and Duster. My daughter's helped me with these latter two, and the Dart is my wife's and the Coronet is mine. I promised myself that I wasn't going to restore any more cars, but I think I've got it in the blood and I've just got to do it. Let's start off introducing the cars that I've restored. They've all been on, like I said, the FABO or the FBBO forums. Up on the left is a 72 Duster. That was an original slant six car, Tucson car, air conditioning from the factory. When I got it, it had been partially gutted to get ready to make it a drag car. Part of the deal was I got a 73 Dart with it. That had the entire drivetrain, pretty much an untouched car. It's just 73 Dart isn't terribly desirable. So that came with the deal, pulled the entire drivetrain out of it, put the wider radiator in it. Because it was for my daughter, I wanted to make sure she didn't have overheating problems. So it's got the big radiator, which was never available in 72, and the entire 318 drivetrain all the way back 904, 8 3/4 rear end, 276 gears. That one has Bruce Toth heads and Edelbrock intake with an Edelbrock carburetor. Below it is the car I just finished. That's a 66 Valiant. That was going to be the other daughter's car. She's kind of lost interest. I think she was just a little jealous that everybody else had a car and she didn't. So she's not really that interested in driving it. So it's now a family car effectively. That car is an original 273 car, came from Southern California, went to Phoenix in the early 70s and been a one owner car since it came to Phoenix in the early 70s. That was a major project for metalwork. It'd been hit a couple times. Long story, but the daughter just sort of fell in love with that car. I was sort of didn't care one way or another, but now that it's done, I really like that body style. Now that it's restored back to original, I ended up putting factory air conditioning that I got off another car, power brakes, disc brakes. It's really a 360 block because the 273 is long gone, but I backdated it all so it looks like a 273 Commando under the hood. My 68 Coronet, original 318 car, bought it from the original owner. The car had 88,000 miles original. It had been stored in a garage in Alamogordo, New Mexico since 84, basically. So minimal rust. It did come from Pennsylvania, but again, it had only been in the Northeast for the first 10, 15 years of its life. So it was easy to stop the rust that had started and kind of lock it down over the last 35 years in the dry climate, pretty much stopped it. So I left it at original 318. I put fuel injection in it. I would never do that again. Long story. We'll go into that some other day. But it was my first restoration 6 years ago. It's been driving and running perfectly ever since. That car was actually on my classic car with Dennis Gage. It was kind of funny because I didn't even know who the guy was, and everybody else was excited, and I had no idea. And the other one is a 63 Dart right here, convertible, was my wife's. This one has a slant 6 225. That's all you could get in 63 because the firewall would not allow a V8 in it. These cars were designed around a slant 6. But then Ford and Chevy came out with V8s in their small cars. Chrysler said they hadn't figured out how to put a 73 in. So they modified the firewall, changed where the wiper motor went a little bit, and got us V8 in here. But I left it as slant 6. It's a hot rodded slant 6. It's got Dircher duals on it, dual one barrel from an Offenhauser intake, decked the head, so it's got about 9-to-1 compression. Still got the push button transmission, but she runs good. So let's just take a quick tour of the garage and I'll show you the tools that I use. Nothing special, nothing fancy. nothing terribly expensive. Every time I restored a car, I added $1,000 tool to my project list. So maybe I've got $5,000 in tools that I've accumulated over the last 6 years that really aren't necessary. The Cornet was done with none of them. It just, once you start doing more and more, it's nicer to have these tools because it just goes faster. So let's take a look. Start off in this corner. Harbor Freight sandblaster. Once you have one of these, you wonder how you ever lived without it. For bigger jobs and blasting in the driveway, I ended up buying this Clemco. My opinion is the design of the blasting gun is everything. The cheap Harbor Freight ones just aren't quality guns. This Clemco really works well for what it is. And it's designed to use in lower CFM, so that compressor works much better for it. Just simple hand tools that I've got stored away here in the bins. Nothing that most garages don't have. Most garages have workbenches that are useless, just like mine. I tend to like to work outside, just southern Arizona where I live. Higher altitude is just so nice to be outside where there's lots of light. Also, it keeps the dust down in the garage. My old tried and true Craftsman compressor that's been doing me good for must be 35 years now. I did buy this 60-gallon 220 unit. Probably, I think I bought that when we started the second restoration. That was useful. Always fought dry air, so on the third restoration, I went and bought a dryer. Can't live without that these days. I was actually a GM mechanic in a former life before I was an electrical engineer, so I've got a fair amount of just hand tools from back in the day. And again, another bench that's useless. Hand tools and supplies up in the bins. And a lift. And usually the lift just has a car on it, storing it out of the way, so it actually doesn't get used very much as a real lift. Cornet is used as a workbench quite often. And here's the wife start. So that's a quick introduction to the cars that I've restored and my garage. So let's jump in and see what the next project is. I struggled to figure out what I wanted to do next. Had a couple choices. One was a 64 Dart station wagon. That's still in the mix. But I think I'm going to trade some services of painting a car for the guy's mother as part of the trade on that one. So I'll probably not get that one for later this summer. So what I did do is I actually found a pair of these. So through my newfound contacts up in the Phoenix area, I came across a guy that had a couple A100 pickups that he wanted to sell. This is the worst of the two. And the other one he was going to deliver as part of the deal. I went and picked this up yesterday. And unfortunately, my daughter has given my wife and I her nasty cold, so I'm probably not going to be doing a whole lot today. I just thought I'd start this channel, introduce everybody to the vehicle that we're going to restore, and probably that's about it. So this is a 1969 Dodge A100 pickup truck. And it's been an Arizona vehicle since day one. Probably noticed a little rust on this, and there's actually a reason for that. And I will probably be harping on that a dozen times through this restoration. Why most stuff you spray on your vehicle is snake oil, and don't use it. So you can see here, you wouldn't expect this to be an Arizona vehicle, which is okay because I got 4 extra doors and a whole host of new parts with the deal. So I'm not worried about those doors. But if you look in here, first of all, she's a 225, 3 on the tree, showing 57,000 miles. I have a feeling that's original because I believe this was a work truck that just lived his life in Phoenix back in the 70s. The last tag on it is 84. So there's a lot of urban myth on where this truck came from. I just went down to get a title for it. Looks like that's going to be a piece of cake because it's still in the system. So I started to work on it a little bit here today. But the first thing you notice is what is all this white crap everywhere? So what it looks like is back in the day, somebody thought it might be cooler in here if they sprayed some sort of a gummy, gooey, sound deadening insulation material all over this thing. So what that effectively did was once it started to fail, here I've chipped some of it out. Once it started to fail, the water and moisture would get in between the metal and that stuff, whatever it is, and just get trapped in there and rust. And if you look inside the door, it's exactly what happened here. You can see that stuff is all over in there, and where it's rusty, you can see where it's failed. And now when it rains, water runs down past the whiskers, down into that crack, and it just gets trapped in there. So unfortunately, this one is going to be a ton of work trying to get all this crap out of here. Then it's going to be a ton of work fixing all the metal. So if you notice, even down here where it's failed, the metal's just rotten. So this truck, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be taking all these spot welds out, removing these panels from both sides. And the worst part about it is up here. This stuff has failed, gone in behind here, and rotted this out. On the other side, it's really bad. And it actually attacked the roof of the cab on the other side. So let's look. I think what happened is the truck was probably sitting a little bit at an angle, tipped this way. The moisture kind of accumulated through its years, and it all ran that way and just rotted it out. See, there's a hole in the roof here where they had an antenna probably. That's a perfect entrance place. You can see how it failed here. Probably ran right in, right down there, and right over. So let's go to the other side. So you can see just a mess. So I'm going to end up having to cut along here. I've been struggling whether I'm going to take all the spot welds out along here, along the top of the frame. This appears to be the last panel that was installed at the factory. It's all overlapped here, down and through here in the gutter, around here. I got to get the glass out and make sure that it's the top panel that got sandwiched in here. It's highly possible I can get all the spot welds out and just lift the panel. I'm not sure I want to do that. We'll see how it goes. See, it's all rotten here. This is an Arizona truck. There's no reason for it to be like this. It's just somebody thought it was a great idea to put this insulation foam stuff everywhere, and it did more harm than good in the long run. So I decided to kind of figure out what is going to work the best for removing this stuff. So you almost think of this stuff as undercoating because it's very similar. So the first thing I did was try to heat it up with a torch and scrape it. And as you see, it worked okay, but there's a whole lot of cleanup afterward. I've had this debate on forums in the past about the best way to get undercoating off, and to date, I have found nothing faster in getting undercoating off than a scaler. This is just a cheap Harbor Freight one. I'm sure a better brand company would work better. I have not sharpened the needles at all. They're just factory. But I just started here. The only thing this does do in this vehicle, it doesn't matter to me because it's going to get a ton of primer and blocking and sanding. So these little scratches will all come out. You don't want to do it this way. That will guarantee you actually put divots in the metal. I always run it at about a 45-degree angle, and this stuff pretty much will peel right off. I'll try to do a quick little demonstration. So there we go. That was just a couple minutes, and we got a ton done. A couple hours, I can have probably most of this cab floor done. Sides are going to go a little slower because I got to be a little more careful because you can actually see that metal from the outside, so I can't quite be so aggressive. But that's going to be the slow part because I got to do all those beads where the metal panels are lipped and everything. But as I was saying about snake oil and rust encapsulants and all that stuff, I won't say any products by name, but anything that claims you can paint over rust and it makes a nice hard clamshell over it, all that means is when the body flexes in a few years, it's going to break loose from that rust, have a nice moisture trap, and that's what you're going to see underneath. I would have never known that was like that by just looking at the top surface, because that stuff is actually pretty thick and pretty hard. The only thing that should be going down on metal is epoxy primer, and that's properly prepared metal. So I'll get off my soapbox. I probably lost a whole bunch of viewers already from that rant, but I'm going to just tell you the truth on how to make these cars last. So I think I'll end this pilot episode right here, and hopefully I've captured your attention. And I hope to see you next time as we bring this old A100 pickup truck back to its former glory, and actually better.